The Indiana Fever just got absolutely demolished. And what Stephanie White did in this game should have every single fan calling for her job right now. Before we expose exactly how she let Nafisa Collier drop 32 points like it was a layup drill, you need to hear what just broke about Caitlin Clark's injury that changes everything. Hit that subscribe button because this is about to get wild, and you're going to want to be here for what's coming next. Nafisa Collier just made Stephanie White look like a high school coach. And I'm not even exaggerating. 32 points on 11 of 19 shooting. And she'd been out for 7 games with an ankle injury. 7 games. She comes back and immediately destroys the Fever like they're a G League team. And here's the kicker. White knew this was coming and did absolutely nothing to stop it. The defensive schemes were a joke. The rotations were embarrassing. And by the end, even the players looked like they'd given up on their coach. But wait, it gets worse. While Collier was cooking the Fever's defense, guess who was sitting on the sidelines in street clothes? Caitlin Clark missing her 15th straight game. Sophie Cunningham out for the season with a torn EMOL and Stephanie White solution. Play Kelsey Mitchell into the ground for 38 minutes while your bench sits there collecting dust. This isn't coaching. This is basketball malpractice. Let me break down exactly how bad this 97-84 beatdown really was. The Lynx shot 57% from the field. 57. They shot the same percentage from three-point range. 12 of 21. You know what that means? The Fever's defense was so bad that Minnesota could have closed their eyes and still made over half their shots. And the most embarrassing part, this happened at home. Wait, no. This was in Minneapolis. But still, the Fever had just played them 2 days earlier and should have known exactly what was coming. Here's where Stephanie White completely lost the plot. Minnesota went on an 11-0 run to close the second quarter. And what adjustments did White make? Absolutely none. She watched Maria Kleonova score or assist on every single point in that run and didn't call a timeout, didn't change the defense, didn't do anything, just stood there with that confused look on her face while her team got buried. That's when you knew this game was over. When your coach has already mentally checked out before halftime, the Michaela Timpson situation is even more insane than you think. Here's your most athletic defender available. Someone who could have at least made Collier work for her points. And White plays her less than 2 minutes. Make it make sense. Meanwhile, she's got Aaliyah Boston trying to guard Collier in the post, getting absolutely cooked possession after possession. Boston ended with 14 points, which sounds decent until you realize she was minus 18 when she was on the court. That's not a player problem. That's a coaching disaster. Now, let's talk about what nobody else is mentioning. The complete collapse of team morale. Multiple sources inside the organization are telling me that players are openly questioning White's decisions in the locker room. Not publicly, of course, but behind closed doors, there's a full-scale revolt brewing. Kelsey Mitchell, who scored 26 points while basically playing on one leg, was reportedly furious after the game about the lack of help defense and the nonsensical rotations. Shaw Petty came in and scored 16 points on a 7-day hardship contract. Think about that for a second. A player who's been with the team for less than a week outplayed half your regular rotation. Natasha Howard, who's supposed to be your defensive anchor, managed just 10 points and looked completely lost on switches. This is what happens when your coach has no system, no philosophy, and no answers. The injury crisis has exposed Stephanie White as a coach who can only win with elite talent. Without Caitlin Clark, this team has no identity. Without Sophie Cunningham, they have no toughness. And White's response to losing 4 guards to injury: sign random players off the street and hope for the best. There's no development, no system to fall back on, just pure chaos. And pray that individual talent bails you out. Let's be real about Caitlin Clark's situation because new information just came out. That's absolutely shocking. She's now missed 24 games out of 37 this season. 24. She's played in 13 games total. The franchise player, the reason people are buying tickets, the future of the WNBA, and she's basically been a ghost all season. And here's what my sources are telling me. She could have come back 2 weeks ago, but the medical staff and White are being overly cautious because they don't trust their own training protocols after all the other injuries. The playoff implications are catastrophic. The Fever are now 19-18, barely hanging on to the 6th seed. They're only 1.5 games ahead of falling completely out of the playoffs. And their remaining schedule, absolute murder. They've got Seattle, who's fighting for their playoff lives. They've got the Liberty, who are getting healthy at the worst possible time. They finish with Minnesota again, who just proved they own this Fever team. If they lose 3 of their next 5, they could legitimately miss the playoffs entirely. But here's the dirty little secret nobody wants to admit. Stephanie White might actually want to miss the playoffs. Think about it. If they make the playoffs without Caitlin Clark and get swept in the first round, that's embarrassing. If they miss the playoffs, she can blame injuries and get a pass for this disaster of a season. It's the perfect excuse for a coach who's already proven she can't handle adversity. The Nafia Collier domination was particularly embarrassing because everyone knew it was coming. She hadn't played in 7 games, was probably rusty, and still dropped 32 like it was a shoot-around. The Lynx didn't even need her to be great. They'd been winning without her, but she came back and immediately exposed every single weakness in White's defensive scheme. No help defense, no rotation discipline, no adjustments, just pure basketball incompetence on full display. You want to know how bad the coaching was? Minnesota's Maria Klinova, who nobody outside of diehard WNBA fans even knows, scored 13 points and was plus 21 in just 23 minutes. She was literally the best player on the court based on plus-minus better than Collier, better than anyone on the Fever. That doesn't happen unless the opposing coach has completely lost control of the game. The Courtney Williams masterclass was another embarrassment for White. 14 points, 10 assists, and get this, 0 turnovers. 0. She completely controlled the game, picked apart the Fever's defense, and made White look like she'd never seen a pick and roll before. This is the same Courtney Williams who's been inconsistent all season, and she looked like Magic Johnson against White's defensive schemes. Here's what really burns me up about this whole situation. The Fever had momentum after winning the Commissioner Cup against this same Minnesota team back in July. They beat them 74-59 without Caitlin Clark. They proved they could compete with anyone when properly coached and motivated. But that was when players still believed in the system. Now they're just going through the motions, waiting for the season to end. Stephanie White's post-game comments were absolutely delusional. She talked about effort and execution like this was some random regular season loss. No accountability for her horrible rotations. No explanation for why Timpson didn't play. No answers for how they allowed 57% shooting. Just coach speak nonsense that proves she has no idea how to fix this mess. The front office has to be panicking right now. They brought White back thinking she was the answer. The hometown hero who would lead them back to glory. Instead, they've got a coach who can't manage injuries, can't develop young players, and can't make basic in-game adjustments. Kelly Kroskop left a successful position with the Pacers for this. She's got to be second-guessing every decision that led to this moment. Let me tell you what I'm hearing from people close to the situation. There's already been preliminary discussions about potential replacements for White if this season continues to spiral. Names like Becky Hammond, who's killing it overseas, and Sandy Brondello, who knows how to manage star players, are being floated. The Fever can't afford to waste another year of Caitlin Clark's career, assuming she even wants to stay at this point. The attendance situation is becoming a massive problem. The Fever were selling out every game when Clark was healthy. Now they're papering the house with free tickets just to make it look respectable on TV. Season ticket holders are demanding partial refunds. Corporate sponsors are asking tough questions. The financial impact of this disaster season could set the franchise back years. And don't even get me started on Aaliyah Boston's regression under White. Last year, she was an all-star, a cornerstone player who looked like a future Hall of Famer. This year, she's averaging 14 points and looking completely lost without Clark to set her up. She had 7 rebounds against Minnesota. 7 for a center who's supposed to dominate the paint. That's not development. That's regression. And it falls directly on the coaching staff. The medical staff needs a complete overhaul, too. For guards with season-ending injuries. That's not bad luck. That's incompetence. Either they're misdiagnosing injuries, rushing players back too soon, or failing at basic injury prevention. Sydney Colson tears her ACL. Aari McDonald breaks her foot. Sophie Cunningham tears her MCLO. And Caitlin Clark can't stay healthy for more than 3 games at a time. This is unprecedented in WNBA history. Here's something that nobody's talking about. The psychological damage this season is doing to the young players. They're learning how to lose, how to accept mediocrity, how to make excuses. That's poison for a developing team. Once that losing mentality sets in, it takes years to break. Look at teams like Connecticut. They've been rebuilding forever because they can't shake that culture of failure. The Lexi Hall situation perfectly encapsulates White's coaching incompetence. She scored a career-high 23 points in the previous game against Minnesota, showing she could be a real contributor. So, what does White do in the rematch? Reduces her role, changes her position, and watches her confidence evaporate. Hall went from looking like a potential starter to barely getting meaningful minutes. That's how you destroy young talent. What really infuriates me is that Minnesota was vulnerable. They'd lost 2 straight games coming into this matchup. Nphisa Collier hadn't played in 7 games and was probably rusty. This was a winnable game if the Fever had any sort of game plan or coaching strategy. Instead, they rolled over and died from the opening tip. The 11-0 run to end the first half should be shown in coaching clinics as an example of what not to do. Your team is already struggling. You're down key players, and you just let the opponent go on a massive run without calling timeout, without making substitutions, without changing defenses. That's coaching malpractice. Any high school coach would have been better prepared. Sources are telling me that even Caitlin Clark, who's always been publicly supportive, is privately questioning whether this is the right situation for her career. She's watching from the sidelines as her team falls apart, knowing that her prime years are being wasted. She's seeing other young stars like Paige Buchers thriving in better systems and wondering what could have been. The comparison to last year under Christie sides is becoming impossible to ignore. Yes, sides only won 20 games, but she had the team playing hard every night. They had an identity. They had a system. Players improved under her watch. White comes in with her supposed superior resume, and everything falls apart. Sometimes experience doesn't mean anything if you can't connect with modern players. Here's what needs to happen immediately. First, Stephanie White needs to be put on notice that her job is in jeopardy. No more excuses about injuries or bad luck. Second, the medical staff needs to be completely replaced. Third, they need to shut Caitlin Clark down for the rest of the season if she's not 100% healthy. Fourth, they need to start interviewing coaching candidates now, not wait until the offseason. The Fever are at a crossroads. They can either admit the Stephanie White experiment has failed and make changes now, or they can waste another year and risk losing Caitlin Clark's faith in the organization. Because make no mistake, if this continues, Clark will want out. And if Clark wants out, this franchise is dead in the water. What happened against Minnesota wasn't just a loss. It was a complete organizational failure on every level. From coaching to medical staff to player development, everything is broken. And until Fever ownership admits that and makes wholesale changes, this is only going to get worse. The 97-84 score doesn't even tell the whole story. This game was over by halftime. The Lynx were up by 12 early in the third quarter and basically coasted the rest of the way. They could have won by 30 if they wanted to embarrass the Fever even more. That's how thoroughly Stephanie White was outcoached. If you're a Fever fan, you should be demanding answers.